I greet you in the strong name of Jesus of Nazareth, the Lord's Christ and our Savior. This is the second year for us thinking about and doing annual conference in ways we had not imagined. And if we had ever imagined them, it was a long time ago. For example, until the year 2020, I had never delivered an Episcopal address other than face-to-face with a live audience. 2020 changed all of that. And what was altered then is still altered for you and for me. We have been changed, and we will be changed some more. Not just for safety's sake, for health concerns, but changed for claiming the possibilities that have emerged out of this crisis. This is, of course, just as true for you in every local church and ministry setting, and it is true also outside of the precinct of the church and the churches. We are adjusting, and we are adapting, and we are creating. We are indeed co-laboring with the triune God in making all things new. I would like to use this small window of time to offer what I refer to as part one of this year's Episcopal address. Partly out of deference to reducing the amount of time in one sitting that you have to look at a screen and I have to talk to you through this camera. And in part two, after this part one, I will offer a more tactical approach to thinking about this year's Episcopal address. So today, foundation and framework on June the 6th, part two, tactics and strategies. Keep in mind, this continues to be new territory for all of us. So grace and mercy are welcome friends on the journey. Many a United Methodist annual conference has started with the singing of Charles Wesley's "And Are We Yet Alive?" In many ways, some of the lyrics have never rung more true than they do now. And are we yet alive and see each other's face? Glory and praise to Jesus give for his redeeming grace. Preserved by power divine to full salvation here, again in Jesus' praise we join, and in his sight appear. What troubles have we seen? What conflicts have we passed? Fightings without and fears within since we assembled last. But out of all the Lord hath brought us by his love, and still he doth his help afford, and hides our life above. Then let us make our boast of God's redeeming power, which saves us to the uttermost, till we can sin no more. Let us take up the cross till we the crown obtain, and gladly reckon all things loss, so we may Jesus gain. We do indeed see one another's faces these days, albeit often in little digital boxes. I rejoice with you that caution, care of neighbor, vigilance, and vaccines have now made it more possible for us to come out from behind our screens to worship and study and fellowship and serve in person, even if it must be in smaller doses and smaller configurations. And speaking of smaller doses, we are, of course, not yet at the place to bring together 2,000 plus people into one auditorium. But keep hope alive. I have every expectation that in 2022, the West Ohio Annual Conference will convene primarily in person, though perhaps not exclusively. What do I mean by that? We do not yet know how great the need is for reasons of safety or mission to create more hybrid environments for our work together. What I can assure you of is that the annual conference planning committee and your conference staff have been and will continue to be vigilant in these matters. The aforementioned hymn helps to set the tone for us, but no more than the theme of perseverance which leaps from it, which is based on the biblical text from the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Hear how it reads in the New Revised Standard Version. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. I happen to have looked at this text in the King James Version, the New Revised Standard Version, the New International Version, the Common English Bible. And what I noticed was that in the place where some translations, like the NRSV, use the word perseverance, other translations, like the Common English or CEB, use the word endurance, and in other iterations still, what is perseverance in one place, endurance in the same place in another translation, the word comes across as patience. Perseverance, endurance, patience. And then I looked at the rendering of Eugene Peterson from the Message, and this is how it reads. Do you see what this means? All these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on. It means we better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race that we are in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. That exhilarating finish in and with God. He could put up with anything along the way, cross, shame, whatever. And now he's there in the place of honor, right alongside God. Perseverance, endurance, patience, never quitting. There are many ways in which the book of Hebrews is complex and tricky, so the scholars tell us. Its authorship is not absolutely certain. There is not always a clear picture of who is the intended audience. Is it an epistle or is it a sermon? But what is really clear about the book of Hebrews is that it is a word intended to encourage the hearts and minds of the weary and the faint of heart. Dr. Tom Long puts it this way. The preacher is not preaching into a vacuum, he says. He is addressing a real and urgent pastoral problem, one that seems astonishingly contemporary. His congregation is exhausted. They are tired of serving the world. They are tired of worship, tired of Christian education, tired of being peculiar and whispered about in society, tired of the spiritual struggle, tired of keeping their prayer life going. End of Dr. Long's quote. The comparisons to our contemporary weariness are downright eerie. We are tired of living with the fear and anxiety of disease. We are tired of wearing masks. We are tired of looking at screens. We are tired of not having the physicality of community. We are tired of the extra work a pandemic brings with it. We are tired of the violence that explodes off of the screen from our homes, communities, and faraway places. We are tired of the disregard of black and brown bodies. We are tired of unresolved, unreconciled racism and white supremacy. We are tired of the political divides that have torn this nation into some shreds. We are tired of a church that has lost its way missionally and is on the edge of schism. You can fill in your own list of things that you are tired of on this journey. We are tired, friends, and some moments and days we want to give up and we want to quit. Dr. Long contends, along with other students and scholars of the scriptures, that this was a weary community. They were pressed from within and from without. They were tired, they were wearied, they were exhausted with all that it meant for them to be faithful to the God who had revealed God's self in Jesus Christ in their time and in their place. And we too are tired. I can hear those words from our sister in the struggle for justice and righteousness in America, Fannie Lou Hamer, who declared, "We are sick and tired of being sick and tired." I wonder if I have any witnesses out there in digital space. But she took her sick and tired self and parlayed that sickness and tiredness with injustice and lack of righteousness and disrespect and shaming, and parlayed it into energy to keep on keeping on in the struggle for justice. So the question is begged of us in our time and place, in the face of our weariness and our exhaustion and our tiredness. What will we do with our sick and tired selves? Will we stop being who we've been called to be? Will we quit? Will we wave some proverbial flag? Will we surrender? Will we say, "I'm done"? Will we just walk away from the work, from God, and from one another? Or will we choose to stay on task? Let me assure you that there is no shame in naming weariness. There is no shame in naming what we are tired of, what is frustrating, and what is exhausting. In biblical terms, the category would be lament. The psalmist was good at this. It shows up in other places in the Bible. People lament, they mourn, they grieve over what's not right. They lament, they mourn, and they grieve because they see something that could be better and could be different. The only question before us is not, are we tired and are we weary of that long litany of things that I shared, whether from Tom Long or from Greg Palmer? The question is, what will we do with that after we've said it out loud? After we've said it in the precincts of our own hearts, in the privacy of our own homes, individually. And what will we do after we've said it to one another? The text that shapes our theme and gives us some huge clues about perseverance, we turn to now. Now, I started with chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. That's the text. That's the logo you've seen of perseverance, of people running in the race. But it cannot be fully understood without turning to chapter 11, where there is a long litany and listing of some of our spiritual ancestors and of their faith. There is no attempt to sanitize their stories or to make them into perfect people. But there is every effort to see that there are positive, redemptive outcomes of their lives of faith all along the way. Time will not permit me to read all of chapter 11 and take you through all of that, but it is there. Their stories remind us that we are not the first to walk this journey, to toil and to struggle to be who God has called us to be. We're not the first to get tired, to feel frustrated, to be scandalized, to think we're getting it wrong, and to wonder what's wrong with us. No, this word of encouragement, this homily of pick-me-up to the Hebrews is about speaking precisely to the kind of context and situation in which we find ourselves in the church writ large, in the United Methodist Church, in this nation, and in all of the places where United Methodism finds itself. We do not even have to go back as far as some of these biblical heroes and sheroes. In our own family stories, we have seen and heard stories of perseverance that inspire us even now. And I speak not of something long ago in your own family history and tree, but people all around you who struggle on with dignity and purpose each and every day because something larger is calling them into the future. There are stories and there are people who surround us with their stories of perseverance, of resilience, of persistence in the face of obstacle. And we admire them because they keep going. I can hear the words of Langston Hughes, who in the poem Mother to Son says, "Son, life for me ain't been no crystal stair." If you don't know it, it would be well worth 5 minutes for you to find it, read it, memorize it. You will see during our session of the annual conference videos that have been made by our communications department of people here in West Ohio in real time who have been willing to share their stories of how they are coming through this season of crisis. They will name their own struggles, their own crises. The pandemic dominates it, but it's not the only narrative because we live in the midst of multiple pandemics. All around us are these people and their stories, from the biblical figures to people in our families, to people in our neighborhoods, to brother and sister Christian United Methodists in West Ohio. We are invited to see ourselves in the struggle and to see that we are not alone. Can you hear the words now that the preacher intends? Seeing then that we are compassed about, that we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. I can hear the hymn writer saying, "I've seen the lightning flash and I've heard the thunder roll. I've felt sin's breakers dashing, trying to conquer my soul, but I heard the voice of Jesus say, still to fight on. I'll never leave you alone." If you get nothing else, get this word. In this struggle, pandemic or not, we have never been, we are not now, and we will never be alone on the journey of becoming the beloved people and community of God. And the second thing that the writer of Hebrews counsels us is to keep our eyes on Jesus. The writer refers to Jesus as the author and finisher, the pioneer and the perfecter. He let no obstacle deter him from his goal, which was nothing less than the complete redemption of all that is. In Wesleyan terms, we refer to it as new creation. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Sometimes, saints, we act like who Jesus is elevator music, rather than something we should literally, intently, and in a focused way be listening to all the time, drilling down deep, peeling back the layers, looking at Jesus, listening to Jesus, seeing Jesus, feeling Jesus, and discerning more deeply his way, who he was and who he is, and in turn, who he is inviting us to be. Do you remember 15, 20 years ago, everybody was walking around with one of those little rubber things that have words on them that you put around the wrist. By the way, they never fit me very well, so I never wore one. But that's another story for another day. WWJD. What would Jesus do? I've often wondered, not just in the living of my own life, but I wonder how seriously we take that, or was it just a fad? Was it just something that awakened like a flash storm for a moment, but we didn't drill down deep enough? We didn't put that question about what would Jesus do and put it alongside of all of the painful realities of life, the injustices, the economic disparities, the violence and the pain and the suffering with which people live and with which we are sometimes complicit, even though we are not always aware of our own complicity. To ask that question, what would Jesus do, is an invitation. It's a way of keeping our eyes on Jesus and wondering and applying as much as we can come to understanding his life, his way of being to our context and to our situation, about justice and righteousness and salvation, about love and about relationships and about the nature of community. And so I ask you this, if our eyes are on Jesus, and even though we're wobbly and we're struggling and we're a little weary, I wonder out loud, is there anything large enough and important enough to pull us into God's preferred future? That's really the missional question we need to be struggling with when we look at Jesus, when we look at the saints who are surrounding us in the stadium, so to speak. Is there anything, is the reign of God, is justice here and now, is the reign of God here and now? We pray that when we pray the Lord's Prayer or the disciples' prayer, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. We could stop right there because that's a vision large enough to capture our imagination anew and afresh as to what's possible, that God's reign, God's sovereignty, God's way of being in community and related to one another and to God is large enough for us to be shaped by it rather than our trying to shrink it down and reshape it into something more palatable and comfortable for ourselves. So how will we persevere? Will there be a mission out in front of us that calls us into the future? And do we have the faith, Hebrews 11, and the courage, all suffering notwithstanding, to say that no matter what, we are not turning back. Not turning back to living lives in a different way, but being called into living them in the Jesus way, who, quite frankly, sometimes gets on each and every one of our nerves because he has the unmitigated nerve to ask us to be in loving, compassionate, merciful, and grace-filled relationships with people that we frankly just don't like. But his way does call for us to inconvenience our preferences and our egos for the larger vision of beloved community, of just relationships. It calls for us to release some of what we have in order that others might just have something. It causes us not to not be who we are, but to be the very best selves that we can be. And we must persist in the doing. Because at the end of the day, while it is wonderfully human, it's somewhat natural, it's a little bit instinctive, giving up, quitting on God and one another and on this world that God loves so much that God gave the Son is not who we have been called to be. We have been called to be those who persevere even in the face of obstacle and inconvenience. You know, I turn to the song traditions, and there are many of them, of the Christian community across time. But I have a deep fondness for some of those songs that are referred to as African American spirituals. And I can hear one now as I prepare to close this. Its words are simple. They are about persevering. They are about endurance. They are about patience. They are about holding on. The words say, hold on. Hold on. Keep your hand on the plow and hold on. Keep your hand on the plow and hold on. What a fabulous metaphor of perseverance, that there might be some livestock out on the other end of that plow pulling and jerking, and the ground is uneven. But if you're going to plow a straight row or an intentionally curved row, you got to hold on to where the plow and the earth and the animal, and we might say the spirit and the world and life are taking us. Keep your hand on the plow and hold on. Amen.